Within Aizen's army, there is one character who stands apart, and it's Coyote Starrk, the Primera Espada. When fans discuss the most powerful characters within Bleach, Stark's name often gets overshadowed by the likes of Ulquiorra, thanks to his Segunda Etapa, or Yami's Resurrection, which is accompanied by his reveal as the zero-ranking Espada. Stark is so different from the other Espada that it confuses me as to why he's often overlooked in discussions of power. He was so naturally strong that other Hollows had died just by being near him, and this was long before Aizen had found him. The question of Stark's true power level has sparked a lot of debates within the community. It's true that the Espada are ranked by their levels of Reiatsu, with Stark being ranked as the #1 Espada. We've even seen evidence to suggest that this system isn't as simple as it appears to be. This is because Ulquiorra had concealed his Segunda Etapa even from Aizen, while Yami had claimed to be the zero-ranking Espada when he had released his Resurrection. And then you have Baraggan's abilities, which seem to transcend power altogether. What makes Stark's case even more fascinating is how Aizen himself approached him differently than the other Espada. According to Kubo's recent comments on his official fan club, Aizen actually waited to recruit Stark until after acquiring the Hokyoku, sensing that confronting him earlier might have been too difficult for Aizen to deal with. This suggests that there's far more to the #1 ranking Espada's power than what we had witnessed within the Fake Karakura Town arc. In this video, I'll be deep diving into the evidence for why Stark truly deserves his position as the Primera Espada. I'll analyze everything from his origin story as a natural Arrancar to the true extent of his untapped potential. And be sure to stick around till the very end of the video, as I'll be talking about the new information about Stark which Kubo has revealed on his official fan club. So without further delay, let's dive into just how powerful the Lonely Wolf of Hueco Mundo really was. Before the video begins, only 20% of the people who actually watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. Stark is different from the other Espada because he didn't need the Hokyoku to become an Arrancar in the first place. While Aizen had used the Hokyoku to evolve various different Hollows like Grimmjow and Ulquiorra, Stark had achieved the form of a Hollow naturally through sheer evolutionary pressure. When Aizen had first encountered Stark, he had already taken on a completely humanoid form, with only minimal holomask fragments remaining. This is a feat that is practically unheard of amongst natural Arrancar. This natural evolution had come at a devastating price. Stark's pre-Aizen existence was marked by uncontrollable power, which killed any Hollow that had come near him. This wasn't just some minor spiritual pressure leak that we're talking about, so if anyone or anything had approached him, they would suffer an instant death. The manga shows us mountains of Hollow corpses surrounding Stark and Lynette, highlighting just how impossibly lonely their existence was. This level of passive Reiatsu is something that we only see again later when Aizen evolves by merging with the Hokyoku. What's even more fascinating is how Stark had dealt with his isolation. Instead of embracing solitude like many powerful Hollows would have, he literally had split his soul into two, creating Lynette Gingerbug as a separate being. She wasn't created by a simple power-sharing ability, he had actually divided his very essence in order to create another life force. And this is actually something that no other Arrancar has been able to achieve. Even in this divided state, their combined spiritual pressure was still lethal to most Hollows that had approached them. Unlike Aizen's confrontation with Baraggan, where Aizen confidently demonstrated his superiority, he waited until after acquiring the Hokyoku before he had recruited Stark. This implies that Aizen in his pre-Hokyoku state wasn't entirely confident about handling Stark's power level. Coming from someone as calculating as Aizen, this honestly speaks volumes about the natural innate strength of Stark. When you compare him to the artificially created Arrancar within the Espada, Stark stands in a class of his own. While others had needed the Hokyoku to unlock their potential, Stark's power was so vast that he needed to actively suppress it just to have a companion. In an ironically tragic twist, the most naturally gifted Espada was also the one who was least interested in using his power for dominating others. Stark's combat capabilities are remarkable, as he has a natural affinity for battle despite him having a very relaxed demeanor. During his battle with Shunsui and Ukitake, he demonstrated an extraordinary level of perception that even these old-school captains had found unsettling. Within moments of him battling Shunsui, Stark had completely completely decoded his two-handed fighting style, forcing Shunsui to acknowledge his analytical ability. Starrk also has a mastery over Sero techniques, as he had set a new standard for Arrancar combat. Unlike the other Espada who require specific stances or preparations, Starrk is able to fire Seros from any part of his body instantaneously. His signature ability, Sero Metraleta, transforms this basic hollow ability into something devastating, as he's able to fire off a barrage of energy blasts which are so dense that they appear to merge into a single wave of destruction. And then you have his Resurrection Los Lobos, and the true nature of it reveals something even more fascinating about the power of Starrk. While other Arrancar seal their power in a Zanpakuto, Starrk's power was so immense that it required another sentient being, Lilynette, to contain it. When released, this power manifests as a pack of wolves that aren't mere constructs but actual fragments of Starrk's soul, each wolf capable of independent thought and tactical coordination. The most interesting thing about Starrk's fighting style is how it reflects his inner conflict. While outwardly he appears to have a lazy approach to battle, in actuality this is a manifestation of his reluctance to demonstrate his full power. The Starrk that we see during the Fake Karakura Town arc was born from a lifetime of isolation. His loneliness was as a result of that incredible strength that he possesses. His fear of isolation prevents him from fully tapping into that power. When Starrk finally unleashes his wolf pack against the Vizard's Love and Rose, we see glimpses of his true potential as he overwhelms two captain-level Vizard simultaneously without even moving a muscle. Starrk has a unique combination of tactical brilliance as well as insane raw power, which once again makes him stand out amongst the Espada. He is not just powerful, he's a natural combat genius who is able to read and counter his opponent's techniques after only having seen them once, all while holding back a lot of his power. It's unfortunate that we never saw Starrk fight at full capacity with real killing intent, so all we can really do is theorize about the true extent of his abilities. Moving on to the discussion of spiritual pressure, there's clearly a hierarchy amongst the Espada, but Starrk exists in a category of his own. Unlike Yami's brute force approach or Ukiura's dense spiritual pressure, Starrk's Reiatsu manifests in a way that fundamentally changes the environment around him. Even after splitting his soul with Lilynette, his mere presence was enough to extinguish weaker hollows, not through intent or malice but just by existing. There are few characters within Bleach who have demonstrated this ability. This destructive ambient Reiatsu effect has been shown from Aizen after he had absorbed the Hokyoku and had started to evolve, as well as from Kinpachi at the peak of his power. What makes Starrk's case unique is that he achieved this naturally without artificial enhancement or special training. The true measure of Starrk's Reiatsu supremacy becomes apparent during the Fake Karakura Town arc. While other Espada struggled in one-on-one fights with captains, Starrk casually engaged multiple captain-level opponents at the same time. He matched Shunsui and Ukitake blow for blow, then later held his own against both Love and Rose while barely exerting himself. This isn't about raw power, it's about the quality and control of his spiritual pressure. What's particularly telling is how Starrk's Reiatsu manifests when he is fighting. While other Espada need to actively channel their spiritual pressure into attacks, Starrk can fire Seros without preparation or even taking a stance like I mentioned earlier. This suggests that his base spiritual pressure is so refined that it naturally takes offensive form. His ability to split his soul into countless wolves, each carrying a portion of his power while maintaining his lethality, also demonstrates a level of Reiatsu control which surpasses the standard capabilities of an Espada. What I think is even more impressive is how Starrk maintains an insane level of spiritual pressure while at the same time actively suppressing himself. Unlike the other Espada like Noitra or Grimmjow, who are always flexing their Reiatsu to intimidate others, Starrk accidentally leaks so much power that he ends up effortlessly overwhelming his opponents despite his best efforts to try and hold back. This suggests that what we witnessed in his battles during the Fake Karakura Town arc was again the tip of the iceberg. It was a small fraction of his full potential. I've mentioned it several times within this video, and it's true, the most interesting thing about Starrk is what we didn't get to see. Throughout his appearances, we witness a fighter who constantly had held back, who had treated lethal combat more like a casual sparring match. But despite all of this, Shunsui was still pushed to the point where he was contemplating using his Bankai. Bankai. A single barrage of Zero Metraleta was enough to make Shunsui consider activating his Bankai, something that he didn't even consider doing while fighting Yamamoto or during the early stages of his battle with Lil Barrow. This speaks volumes about the raw, destructive potential which Stark had possessed and which Shunsui was aware of. And again, I have to emphasize that this was a version of Stark who was fighting well below his max capacity. The full scope of Stark's power becomes clearer when we examine his wolf pack ability. Each wolf contained a fragment of Stark's soul, but yet it possessed enough power to seriously wound captain level Vizards. Remember, these weren't just energy constructs, but they were pieces of Stark himself, each carrying a portion of his immense spiritual pressure. The fact that he could create hundreds of these entities while maintaining their lethal power suggests that his total spiritual energy far exceeded what we had witnessed. Even after splitting his soul with Lilynet, he was still able to put the pressure on multiple captain level opponents at the same time without showing any signs of fatigue. If this was Stark fighting unmotivated and divided, imagine his potential if he had fought at full power with complete focus. And if you combine this change of attitude with Stark returning to his original unified form, then I think that it would make him an unstoppable Arrancar. In question 674 asked Kubo on his official fan club outside, a fan had wondered how strong is Stark really? His abilities don't seem as deadly as Baraggan's, as the fan wonders whether if it's his immense spiritual pressure which puts him on top. And lastly, the fan asks, did Stark join Aizen's ranks only after Aizen acquired the Hogyoku? Kubo responds by revealing that Aizen was aware of Stark even before he had become an Arrancar, but he had decided to wait to recruit him until after he had gained the Hogyoku. Kubo also states that Stark in general is a very difficult character to read, even for the likes of Sosuke Aizen. The symbolism behind Stark's character runs deeper than what is initially apparent, as his aspect of death is solitude, and this isn't just a tragic backstory element, it's intrinsically tied to his overwhelming power. Similar to Kinpachi Zaraki, another character whose strength had isolated him from others, Stark's power level placed him in a lonely category of his own. But while Kinpachi embraced his solitude, Stark's desire for companionship had led him to literally divide his soul, creating a unique dynamic never before seen in Bleach. Bleach consistently positions Stark's strength level above his fellow Espada in very subtle ways. Unlike Baraggan, who needed to proclaim his power, or Yami, who relied on transformation for strength, Stark's power was so natural that Aizen approached him differently than any other Arrancar. This story shows us that while other Espada were given power through the Hogyoku, Stark had to be handled carefully even before Aizen possessed it. In the description of this video, I've posted a link to an hour-long video by Clyde as he power scales Stark and dives into whether if he really was the strongest Espada in Aizen's army. So definitely do go and check that video out after this one. But we now have reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What are your thoughts about the strength of Stark? Do you agree with my take that Stark's character has a ton of unfulfilled potential? Would you like to see his character again in the future of the Bleach manga if it returns via a Hell arc? If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention about the power feats of Stark, then let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.